Welcome to 10 Minute Magic, a bi-weekly format covering news in the world of Magic the Gathering in 10 minutes or less. I am Joseph Dunlap.
And I am Ben Cotty, and this is what's going on in Magic the Gathering this past week. A 16-year-old wins a Grand Prix. So you may remember last month at GPLA, 13-year-old Ethan Brown became the youngest Grand Prix finalist ever. Well, his fellow team has gone one better. The past weekend at GP Columbus, in what is considered the most skill-intensive format Legacy, 16-year-old Clay Spickelmeyer, apologies Clay, took the whole thing down with Infect. With live coverage coming from GP Prague in Europe, it's fair to say that the GP Columbus win has gone a little under the radar. And it's not only coverage, however, that missed this achievement. While featuring a number of decks on StarCityGames.com, including the winner of GP Prague and the Columbus finalist Joe Lissette, Star City Games made no mention of this incredible win or even Clay's deck list. Even across social media there was not much of a stir, and more remarkable still is that the final play of this match should have probably gone down as one of the greatest of all time. Single Noble Hierarch dealing 24 points of trample damage, winning a long drawn out game against Miracles. Clay's achievements solidify why these younger players are such an important part of Magic at every level, and I feel the community and pros have done a disservice in not recognising this accomplishment. From 10 Minute Magic and Manaleak.com, we say, well done, Clay.
Sleep-In Special stirs controversy. The Sleep-In Special was first introduced by tournament organizers as a perk that allowed players in a sealed Grand Prix to pay so they didn't have to turn up until later in the morning and construct an already registered pool of cards. This is also a common practice at pre-releases at local game stores. It proved very popular and meant a few more precious hours of sleep or the ability to arrive on a flight in the morning or the red eye. This was then expanded to people with buys for constructed tournaments, which garnered complaints, as if you had already submitted your deck list early, you were just being charged to sleep longer and skip the players' meeting. At Grand Prix Columbus, Pastimes created something many have been asking for, which is the ability for any player to submit their deck lists electronically in advance. This meant the Sleep-In Special was literally paying to sleep longer with no other benefit. It broke the camel's back, and many pros, notably Todd Anderson and Sam Black, won a lengthy Twitter lambast of not Pastimes in particular, but the lamentable value in a Sleep-In Special fee of upwards of $20. It wouldn't be surprising if this gains traction and ultimately leads to either the removal of the Sleep-In Special for constructed or reduced fees overall.
How much Eternal Masters product is there? As often is the case, Wizards of the Coast haven't exactly told us how much Eternal Masters product is in circulation. They sold it all to distributors, and like the Modern Masters printings of the past, no product would be available direct from Wizards at any point. Modern Masters 1 had a very small print run, but distributors even kept some back to bleed into the market slowly over time. In addition, there was a record-breaking Vegas Grand Prix, which opened a lot of product in one weekend. With Modern Masters 2, there was the huge release weekend with effectively 4 Grand Prix and a much larger print run. From looking across the various finance commentators on Star City Games and mtgprice.com, it would seem the view is that the run was similar in size to Modern Masters 1, as Wizards had alluded to when they first announced the product, but no more product is being held back by the distributors. In conjunction with no large Grand Prix, the product being opened and the amounts of singles available on the secondary market feels like it's even less than the original Modern Masters. I believe the time to get singles is now, with peak supply and a bounce back on prices due. They've dropped dramatically already, and I expect them to swiftly and substantially get back to nearer where they were originally.
Grand Prix points race heats up. As part of the piece on Fabrizio's suspension in our last episode, we mentioned how open the race for Grand Prix Master has become, the player with the most pro points across all GPs in the year, and with it a World Champ slot. The competition is now heating up. With only 3 Grand Prix since the suspension, there still isn't a clear frontrunner. Saito and Brian Bronduin are literally tied at 47 points, with the 4th tiebreaker, Planeswalker points, being the current decider. Reed Duke is currently 1 point behind, and Seth Manfield 2 points behind. With only 3 Grand Prix left for the competitors, culminating in Grand Prix Sydney before the PT, every event counts as everyone plans for the Team GP in Sao Paulo.
And that is the news in Magic the Gathering this past week. Moving on to the article roundup from Manaleak this week, let's start off with Chris Belfield's article that was recently featured on Channel Fireball. Is abolishing the MTG reserve list the way forward for Legacy and Vintage? By Chris Belfield. So this was a heavily contested topic that generated a lot of discussion. In it, Chris tackles a subject that continues to be an area of debate in the Magic community, Would Legacy and Vintage be better off if Wizards did away with the reserve lists? So if we have a look at some of the comments, firstly from Mike Bauman, just announced you are getting rid of the list in 2 to 3 years and be done with it. Wizards is so worried about being sued over something that is collectible. Beanie Babies, comic books, sport cards, signatures, none of those collectibles have a policy that says their cards will always be worth something. Wizards of the Coast doing it all wrong. And from Eric James, if the reserve list doesn't go away, Legacy will. And finally from Jerry Michael Tondini, keep the reserve list. It promotes the formats as a serious investment and not just something you jump into. It separates the serious from the casual.
The next article is from a brand new writer, Claire Stevenson. So what do you do for fun? Magic the Gathering, Mental Health, and Me by Claire Stevenson. This was a well-received article that made the rounds on social media as it tackled mental health, depression, and making friends in the Magic community. If you haven't read it yet, we highly recommend you go check it out. In the comments, Matthew Dearling says, this really resonated with me as someone who has had to deal with a lot the past 2 years. This was an amazing reminder of the strength of the human spirit, its fragility, the benefit of good players, and how awesome Magic is. Steve Ford says, thank you for your bravery in writing this article. I feel sure it will help other people feel able to seek help where they need it, or at least know there are people who might understand.
And I echo this. I think this is one of those articles that everybody in the Magic community should definitely go and read. And our next article is actually touching on the topic from a slightly different point of view. Mental Magic, Anxiety, Fear, Doubt and Depression, and That's Okay by Rebecca Rose. This was a follow-up on Rebecca's first article for Manaleak, Fear, Doubt and Self-Loathing at Grand Prix Manchester, which covered mental health in the context of preparing to attend your first ever Grand Prix. Did I make the right deck choice? Did I waste my money building it? Am I even good at Magic? Why am I even going? Rebecca's latest article recounts her experiences at Grand Prix Manchester, how she did at the tournament, and how she felt about it afterwards. In some of the comments, Amanda Rourke, I have so much trouble with going to these events. I love going, but I never play in the main event because my anxiety. And that little voice says, you aren't good enough. Don't bother. And Dustin Derek Gilmore says, I got back into Magic about 4 years ago, and I've never been into an event larger than the Friday Night Magic for the exact reasons you describe. I suffer from depression, anxiety, frequent panic attacks, and I'm bipolar. So as much as I love playing the game, I haven't been able to get over those hurdles to attend a large event. Reading this gave me the hope that I will one day be able to. Thank you. And from some guy named Benjamin Cotty, was great having you play with the cube. Your deck was solid and you just got a bit unlucky, especially against me. Glad you had a great first GP and see you in London. And I'll elaborate on that it was great playing some of my cube at the end of day 2 with Rebecca and some of her friends.
Our final article this week was also featured on Draw 4 Podcast, a comprehensive beginner's guide to Magic the Gathering Online by Carrie Meyerhoff. There's a great discussion about this article on the latest episode of Draw 4 Podcast, episode 21, in which I play a part, so you should definitely check it out. Carrie's article covers how to get started in Magic the Gathering Online, what events you can enter as a new player, and what to do once you've made a deck with your starting card collection. In the comments, we see Robert O'Sullivan says, very nice article. I've been looking at playing Magic the Gathering Online for some time, and after reading this I decided to bite the bullet yesterday and I paid the £10 to get started. I have mixed feelings about it so far. Yes, it's good. I can play whenever I want now. However, I didn't realize how much of a grind it would be to build up my library without spending a fortune on event tickets and boosters.
Thanks for listening to 10 Minute Magic. You can find us both on Twitter
At Joseph_Dunlap.
and myself at Carburita. Until next time, bye bye.
See you next week.